Okay, let's start with something pretty surprising today. There's this major new report out, and it suggests that the knowledge work many of us do, the comfortable desk job, it might actually be more at risk from AI than, say, being a plumber or someone handling hazardous materials.
That's right. And this isn't just some think tank guessing. This is data, real data, coming straight from Microsoft. It really flips the script on what we've thought for, well, decades about job security and prestige. It feels like a genuine shift is happening.
So today we're going to do a calm, curious deep dive into this. We're looking mainly at a Microsoft study, and it's based on something like 200,000 real interactions people had with their AI Copilot.
Yeah, and our mission is pretty straightforward. We want to unpack what the study actually found. We'll look closely at the 40 jobs they say are most vulnerable and then the 40 they say are safest. And crucially, talk about the strategic pivot, kind of like a survival map, that you might need in this new emerging outcomes versus inputs economy.
We'll kick off with the methodology, why this study actually carries so much weight. Then we'll get into those two very different job lists. And we'll wrap up with what you might need to think about doing, maybe even tomorrow, to stay relevant.
The authority here really comes from the data itself. It's raw performance data, unfiltered. And you have to think, Microsoft had basically zero incentive to cause a huge panic, right? I mean, a lot of the jobs listed as vulnerable are ones their own software is supposed to help. So the fact they published this suggests they're pretty confident in the findings.
What I find really interesting is how they measured success. They weren't just asking people, hey, what do you think AI could do? No, they looked at whether the AI could actually complete a task end to end.
Yeah.
Did it finish the job?
Exactly. And just as important, did the human user actually like the result? Was the quality good? So that combination, can it do the work? And is the work any good? Let them calculate this mathematical score. They call it the AI Applicability Score for loads of different jobs.
And that score is basically what? A measure of how much a job's main tasks overlap with what AI can do right now.
Precisely. It's hard data based on what AI is doing, not just what it might do someday. It's performance-based.
Okay, but hang on. Isn't there maybe a bit of a measurement bias here? I mean, if the data comes from Copilot, which is mostly used in white-collar information-type settings, doesn't that automatically make those jobs look more automatable? Just because they were the ones being measured.
That's a really fair point to raise, but the analysis, it really zeroed in on, could the AI finish the specific task given to it, and was the user satisfied with that task's output? It wasn't trying to measure the whole job scope. The conclusion seems to be that, yeah, for these core, repeatable tasks within many white-collar roles, the AI is consistently handling them, and users are generally happy with the results.
Right, the core task, not necessarily the whole job yet.
Exactly. It's about the overlap on those core functions.
Okay, let's look at this danger zone. Then the job scoring highest on AI applicability. It really does suggest a big shift, almost like the commoditization of purely informational work, especially jobs heavy on communication and analysis.
Interpreters and translators are right there at the top, and that makes a ton of sense, doesn't it? The underlying transformer technology in these AI models, it was literally invented to process and translate language. Real-time universal translation is basically what it's designed for. That core function is becoming digitized.
And historians. That one's high on the list, too. That gives you pause. And AI can be trained on, well, pretty much every history book ever digitized, every archive. It can recall, analyze, connect dots across vast historical periods almost instantly. That kind of comprehensive literature review is just beyond human speed.
It doesn't stop there either. Think about sales reps, but maybe more the back office kind. Not the ones out building deep, long-term relationships face-to-face, but the ones, writing proposals, handling standard objections over email, maybe drafting sales copy. That's manipulating structured information, synthesizing data, perfect work for an LLM.
We're also seeing writers and authors mentioned, specifically maybe mid-tier ones. It seems the distinction is, if your writing mainly involves repackaging existing info, summarizing, synthesizing, that's becoming automatable. The value shifts, doesn't it? It has to be about creating new insights, unique perspectives.
Right. Less aggregation, more origination. And look at broadcast announcers, radio DJs. Synthetic voices are getting incredibly good, almost indistinguishable sometimes. And they can work 24/7, no vacations, no salary negotiations. The economic logic for automation there is, well, pretty compelling for some businesses.
And the list goes on, jobs 11 through 40. It really sweeps across roles we used to think of as pretty safe, knowledge-based work. You see news analysts, maybe the ones mainly aggregating stories rather than doing deep investigative work. Political scientists, perhaps those reviewing huge amounts of policy documents. Technical writers, too.
Oh, technical writing is a fascinating example. An AI can literally look at complex software code and just generate clear, accurate documentation from it. Almost instantly, it removes that human step between the code and the user manual.
Even roles like data scientists aren't totally immune. Maybe not the ones defining the core business problem or the experimental design, but perhaps the ones doing more routine tasks, like data cleaning, running standard regressions, basic visualizations. AI is incredibly powerful at analyzing huge data sets now, maybe even better at spotting subtle patterns sometimes.
So the common thread here, what links all these vulnerable roles? It seems to be a heavy reliance on digital analysis and communication. They're either very communication-focused writing, translating, reporting, or they're about information synthesis research, analysis, or they involve structured problem solving, like basic coding or documentation. If, say, 80% of your day is spent manipulating abstract data on a screen, you're kind of sitting right in the blast zone.
It's a tough thing to get your head around, psychologically. Even for those of us who use these tools daily, I still wrestle with prompt drift myself sometimes. It's not always smooth sailing.
That's a good point, prompt drift, where the AI's output quality kind of degrades or goes off track during a longer task. It highlights the current limitations.
Exactly. And it makes you think. It's hard not to worry about just being average, in the 50th percentile when the AI is getting so good at specific automatable skills. So let's say my job is 80% information synthesis at a computer.
Right.
What's the single biggest factor that might buy me some time?
I'd say creating content or value that stems from unique lived experiences, that's the thing AI can't replicate. That seems to offer the strongest protection right now.
Okay, so if information synthesis is where AI shines, what's its weakness? What's the kryptonite? This brings us to the really surprising part of the study. The safe zone. The jobs with the lowest AI applicability score.
Right, and these jobs seem protected by these deep moats, these barriers that AI, frankly, really struggles with. Things like high-stakes human interaction, complex physical tasks in unpredictable settings, and situations demanding immediate human accountability.
When you look at the top 10 safest careers, it's striking. You see phlebotomists, nursing assistants, oral and maxillofacial surgeons.
Think about a phlebotomist drawing blood. That needs immense trust, physical dexterity, a gentle touch. Are people going to let a robot do that anytime soon? Probably not. Same with nursing assistants. Caring for vulnerable people requires empathy, physical presence, quick human judgment calls that AI just isn't built for, not reliably anyway.
And what really underscores this whole rebalancing idea is the irony, maybe a beautiful irony, of jobs like hazardous materials, removal workers, being so safe from digital automation. The most dangerous physical jobs seem among the most protected. While the person typing at a keyboard might be at risk, the person maintaining critical physical infrastructure is becoming, indispensable economically.
Yeah, the whole safe list is full of skilled trades and jobs requiring complex physical interaction. Cement masons, industrial truck operators, painters helpers, ship engineers. These involve either really complex physical systems or working in messy, unpredictable environments where a human's ability to adapt on the fly is absolutely essential.
Whoa. Just stop and think about the sheer complexity. Imagine trying to program a robot to reliably handle the kind of unpredictable chaos you'd find being, say, a dishwasher in a busy commercial kitchen, or a cement mason working on an uneven patch of ground when it suddenly starts raining. That level of real-world dynamic problem solving, it feels like it's still a long way off for AI and robotics at scale.
Definitely. So the safe list really points to maybe 4 consistent moats or protective factors. First, physical manipulation, but in unstructured real-world places, not a predictable factory floor. Second, life and death accountability, situations needing real human judgment with serious consequences. Third, high-touch, trust-based services that demand genuine empathy. And fourth, complex problem solving, but in messy, physical, non-digital contexts.
Does this pattern, this survival pattern, suggest we're maybe seeing a societal rediscovery, a rediscovery of the actual economic value and maybe even the dignity of physical labor and skilled trades?
I think absolutely. It suggests economic value is going to flow maybe rapidly and predictably towards those who maintain our physical world, who solve tangible, non-digital problems.
Which marks what the source calls the flippening. It feels like a clear end to that roughly 30-year era where knowledge work seemed like the ultimate goal. The very criteria for being vulnerable, now studied something abstract in college, sit at a computer all day, are almost the exact opposite of the criteria for the surviving jobs working with your hands, dealing with unpredictable environments.
So, okay, If you're listening and you identify as being in one of those more vulnerable information worker roles, what's the strategic response? What's the map forward? The analysis suggests maybe three main paths. First one, move one level up,
Yeah.
meaning shift from being the executor of the task, the coder, the writer, the analyst, to being the orchestrator.
So you become the person managing the team of AI agents, maybe?
Yeah.
Or the manager directing the overall automated workflow. You stop doing the granular work and start managing the system that does the work?
Exactly. The second path is embrace entrepreneurship. Because when AI makes the execution cheap or even free, the real human value shifts completely. It moves to knowing which problems are worth solving in the first place, for a client or for the market. You become the strategist, the one with the insight into needs and opportunities.
That makes sense. The what and why become more valuable than the how. And the third path.
The third path is a pivot to an adjacent field, moving into areas where that deep human judgment, the relationship building skills, critical thinking that goes beyond just processing information, where those things are still absolutely irreplaceable. Think maybe high stakes crisis management or complex stakeholder negotiations, things like that.
And this idea seems reinforced by looking at what makes the very top performers, the top 1%, survive and thrive even now. They call them the synthesizers.
Right. They don't just rely on one narrow skill that can be automated away. They synthesize multiple capabilities. They're part architect, part manager, part strategist, part the person ultimately accountable when things go wrong. Crisis communicator, maybe.
Which leads us neatly into maybe the most crucial mindset shift needed right now, the outcomes versus inputs revolution. We have to stop focusing just on the input. Stop asking, should I learn Python? Should I learn this new tool?
Yeah, that's chasing skills.
Right. And start asking about the outcome. What concrete value can I actually deliver?
Yeah.
What result am I responsible for achieving?
Because trying to just skill max, constantly learning the next technical input, it feels like a losing game when you're up against multi-billion-dollar AI research labs. The new economy, it seems, demands outcome ownership.
I like that phrase, outcome ownership. It's like
Yeah.
the input might be the process of building a bridge. The outcome is getting the vital shipment safely across the river on time. You'd have to own that delivery, that result, and use whatever tools you need, human teams, AI tool, whatever combination works to make it happen.
Accountability becomes the new currency. So, okay, let's make it practical. How does a typical, maybe average information worker start today to develop these synthesis skills, this outcome ownership mindset?
The most direct routes seem to be either actively focusing on climbing the management ladder within your current organization, because management inherently involves orchestration and accountability, or perhaps more proactively starting a side business, even a small one. That immediately forces you to think about client needs, delivering value, managing resources, and being directly accountable for results outside of maybe more structured corporate role. That experience forces synthesis.
This really does feel like a societal earthquake, doesn't it? A true great rebalancing. We should probably expect to see shifts in income distribution with maybe more wealth and, prestige flowing back towards those physical service providers, the skilled craftspeople, and definitely the entrepreneurs who identify and solve the problems AI can't.
It feels like the breaking of that traditional pipeline, the one that went go to college, get a degree, get an office job. It's forcing a return to fundamentals, perhaps. Value flows towards tangible outcomes, towards strong relationships, towards real-world problem solving, not just digital credentials on their own. Maybe it is ultimately a dignity revolution, reappreciating the people who keep the physical world running.
So, wrapping up the core finding here, AI is proving incredibly adept at commoditizing white-collar information work much faster than physical labor, simply because its core strength is abstract data processing and synthesis.
Which means the strategic move for you, listening now, feels almost unavoidable. You have to transition from being primarily an executor, someone focused on inputs and tasks, to becoming an orchestrator, someone focused on delivering the complete outcome, using AI as your most powerful leverage, your tool.
The future seems to belong to those who can effectively coordinate both human and artificial resources to solve real problems and deliver that measurable value.
So we'd really encourage you, maybe after this, to take an honest look at your own work, your own vulnerability. Are you mostly synthesizing existing information to produce an output? Or are you creating unique value derived from experience, judgment, relationships, things an AI currently can't replicate?
Because the crucial question isn't really, will AI take my job anymore? It's shifting to, how can I strategically use AI and my uniquely human skills to deliver better, more accountable outcomes than anyone else in my field? That shift in perspective, that really feels like it defines the challenge and the opportunity of the next decade.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.
Always more to learn.